Good evening, Central Atlantic Conference. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule today to join us for this second workshop in this series on this important initiative, the Mid-Atlantic Data Collaborative, this environmental and climate justice initiative in partnership with Interfaith Power and Light, DMV, and the Community Engagement, Environmental Justice and Health Center at the University of Maryland. For those who are just joining us, please take time to introduce yourself in the chat. Tell us your name, your local church, and your local church city. We want to take just a few moments, particularly for those who may be joining us for the first time in these workshops, to give you just a quick overview of the initiative as a whole. And then we're going to jump right into tonight's focal point, which is air quality basics. And we're glad to have Professor Dr. Sakobi Wilson with us this evening. John, if you can bring up the slides and we can just do a quick walkthrough. So for those of you who are familiar with the Central Atlantic Conference, in my role as your Associate Conference Minister, I am responsible for facilitating the work of Justice and Witness Ministries. And we do this work through our new justice movement called the Justice and Witness Action Network. And we are a growing justice network that started back in 2019. And we now have active state action networks in DC, Virginia, and Maryland, and we're actively working to organize state action networks in Delaware and in New Jersey. We also have issue-based networks around critical issues that we're passionate about and that we're called to work on as people of faith. One of those issues is environmental and climate justice, and we're happy that we are working on this critical initiative on air quality, collecting data on the quality of air in and around the DC, Maryland region in partnership with organizations who also care about the environment and climate justice. So I'm just going to turn it over now to one of our own UCC leaders and environmental justice leader here in the region, Robin Lewis, to talk a little bit about Interfaith Power and Light.
Hi, everybody. I'm Robin Lewis. I am the Director for Climate Equity for Interfaith Power and Light, DMV, DC, Maryland, and Northern Virginia. For those of you who are not familiar with Interfaith Power and Light, it is a national organization with, I'd say, state affiliates. So we are actually a regional affiliate, but some of you are in New Jersey and other places. We have IPL all across the country. And our focus is basically on educating congregations about climate change, climate justice, and also equity issues with regard to the environment and climate change. So we kind of try to help organizations go green. We help them with educating their congregations about climate change. We also help with advocacy associated with environmental issues in the state and in the region. So thank you all, and that's it.
Thank you, Robin. And what I want to do right now is actually turn it over to our environmental and climate justice organizer. John, you'll have an opportunity to hear from Professor Wilson about the center more in detail as part of his presentation. But John is going to just walk us through briefly what this initiative is all about, the pilot project, particularly in DC and in Maryland, and our hopes and goals moving forward as we conclude our work in these workshops. John, turn it over to you.
All right, thanks, Reverend Silver. Let me skip over that real quick, and Dr. Wilson will get to it later. So what we're here tonight to talk about is air quality monitoring basics, and you'll get all the hard science stuff from Dr. Wilson in a minute, but this is the rough and ready basics. So what we're going to be doing through the course of this initiative, this pilot program that we're doing as the Environmental and Climate Justice Network, is putting in place monitors at participating congregations. They're little tiny things. You install them with zip ties for the most part, probably 20 feet above the ground. And what they collect information on is, particulate matter in the air, other pollution, just to give us an impression of what the air quality at your particular site looks like. We have some general understanding that there's broadly agreed upon principles in the way air quality works with urban planning is that where affluent white folks live, the air quality is higher than other places. But for Baltimore and for DC and for the larger DMV, we don't have it. We don't have information on that down to like the neighborhood scale, which is what we're trying to get here, to try to get a better appreciation for what it looks like within cities from one neighborhood to the next. What's the disparity actually look like? How grievous is the problem? And once we know that, let's take that to the legislature to try to get some forward momentum on getting those disparities resolved so that we can all breathe better air and not get sick quite as much and live longer, happier, fuller lives because of it. So without having answered those the way that they're here, but having answered that much, if you've agreed to participate in the air quality monitoring program, thanks for doing so. We're happy to have you here. We're going to be getting started on installing those monitors as the fall goes on. And we'll be distributing these slides later on. So I have some helpful links here for you if you have any questions about what the monitor looks like, what the installation process might look like. Does somebody have to climb a ladder to check on this thing? And if so, is it me? The answer is no, usually. We'll get somebody to come out and do any maintenance for you. And we have some details there on like what the dimensions are for the device, what it is they'll be measuring, all that good stuff. Suffice it to say, they're not difficult to install. They're not going to make any real significant changes to your building or your property. We'll be installing them, we'll be taking them down, and if any maintenance needs to be done, somebody will come out and do it for you. So have no fear. Nobody's getting up on a ladder, nobody's hurting themselves. We're just collecting some good information, and it'll all sync up without your needing to like tap a button or anything like that. It's all gathered in a centralized database, and then we pull from that as needed. So as far as the timeline for what we're going to be doing looks like, we will be getting started on these workshops over the course of the August to November period. We started a couple weeks ago at the end of August. We'll be going until the last week of November, cutting off just in time for Advent, because we know your church calendars get very busy and we don't want to take away from any of that important holiday stuff or make you feel like you've got to choose between which one you want to be handling. So we'll cover everything that we want to get covered between now and then. And then once we hit the end of the year, we'll have everybody gathered together sometime in the new year to check up on the information that we've gathered so far and give you guys an impression of what the data we've gathered looks like. What does it tell us about the DMV? What does it tell us about air quality overall? And it'll keep going from there. It's sort of an open-ended data collection period, but we check it in periodically to give you guys an impression of where we stand and what we've gathered and what we found. As this is the second one in our series, I think most of you were here for our first one back on the 20th of August, where we covered the basics of environmental justice. Tonight, we're going to be covering the basics of air quality, so we'll be doing a little bit more science, a little bit less history. And next week, or I'm sorry, 2 weeks from today, on September 26th, we'll be covering the details of the monitors themselves and the finer points of their installation and their function, and like what other tools are in the toolbox for air quality monitoring. On October 3rd, we'll be covering mapping tools. So how do you make that data that you've gathered mean something on a mapped out format? October 10th, we'll be covering how data is best used and accessed. On October 24th, we'll be covering the use of that data for policy, which, as I said, is a real focus of the program here. We're not just gathering this for the sake of scientific advancement, which is great in itself, but we have ambitions here. On November 14th, we'll be covering community science, and then on November 28th, we'll be covering faith-based community organizing. So stay tuned for all that. We look forward to having you guys there. And if you haven't yet, please RSVP for our September 26th workshop, just so we have an accurate head count and we can make sure everybody gets the link well in advance of the program itself. Like I said, we'll be distributing these slides, so just go ahead and when you get them, click that link there on the bottom of this slide and it'll take you where you need to be. So with that, I think it's time to hand it over to Dr. Wilson. So why don't I pull these down?
Thank you, John. It is a pleasure and an honor to introduce to you this evening Dr. Jacoby Wilson, who is the Associate Professor with the Maryland Institute for Applied Environmental Health and the Department of Epidemiology and Biostatistics, School of Public Health, University of Maryland, College Park. That was a mouthful. And he's also the Director of the Community Engagement, Environmental Justice, and Health Initiative, one of our critical partners in this Mid-Atlantic Air Quality Data Collaborative. So at this time, I'll turn it over to you, Dr. Wilson. We look forward to learning from you this evening. Thank you for being here.
Muted. Can you see the screen? I can see the screen, right? I think so. Slide layout. Okay. I don't usually do slides in this format, but I think it should be fine. So thanks for the introduction. Happy to be here tonight. Again, I'm Dr. Jacoby Wilson, as was just stated. I am Director of the Center for Community Engagement, Environmental Justice and Health. Been at Maryland for about 11 years now. We're getting to year 12, actually. So I'm a full professor now, so got to update that bio online. But I'll be talking about air quality basics and maybe interjecting a few DC area examples of where communities are experiencing differential exposure to air pollution. And just hopefully this presentation will give you understanding the types of sources of air pollution, both mobile and stationary sources, those greenhouse gas emissions, and then also those co-pollutants. I don't like to use the term co-pollutants that are important for public health. So SEED is really a center that tries to do science that serves people. We focus on action-oriented applied science. Science is about social change, and it's justice-centered, community-centered science, and not extractive colonial science. And like I said, we do empowerment science, helping communities build a capacity, build power through science, through scientific tools, and also liberation science. So the idea is to liberate folks from environmental hazards. A lot of my work is around, as you learned in the first workshop, around the issue of environmental justice. And really we try to do community empowerment to help folks fight against environmental racism, environmental apartheid, like what's happening in Jackson, Mississippi, which is a form of environmental apartheid. Understanding that some communities have been marginalized and invisibilized due to policies like redlining, segregation, disinvestment, divestment. And as the father of the environmental justice movement says, some folks tend to have more hazards locally on the land uses due to their skin color. So you learned that last time. So race is the single most important predictor of the distribution of environmental hazards in this country, not income, but race is. So that's the work that I focused on. But it's all about empowerment science and liberation science. And a big part of the work, as part of this initiative, which is funded by the Bezos Earth Fund, we want to build a community-based air quality network in the Mid-Atlantic region to make sure we can understand spatial and temporal patterns of air pollution, but use that data as decision support tools to support local environmental decision-making to mitigate air pollution, both greenhouse gas emissions and also co-pollutants, and mitigate the differential burden and impacts of mobile and stationary sources of air pollution that we find communities across the country, and also, as stated, communities that are in the Mid-Atlantic region, with this pilot project focusing primarily on the DC, Maryland area. So I'm gonna ask this question. What's the one thing you already know about air pollution? I'm not sure who's controlling the chat, but everybody can try to put it in the chat. And then John, or is it gonna be Ariel, y'all will provide some responses, or we should just let anybody chime in as they would like to share. Which way should we do this?
Let's have people unmute and just share what they know. Just encourage everyone to be respectful and not take a lot of time.
Okay.
Well, one thing is you can't always see it. I mean, we have this image that it's junk you can see, but that's not always true.
Who is that? And say your name first.
Oh, it's Beth Frentrup
Go ahead.
from Rockville United Church.
Okay, thanks, Beth. It's because you can't always see it. I got you. Thank you for that. What Beth gives you, you gave you a little bit. You can't always see it. You can always what it. Since you're talking about our 5 senses. What's another one? Who wants to chime in?
Well, we got some here in the chat, Professor Wilson. One, Amy says significant health impacts, and then Janelle states significant air pollution in some urban cities. And Tom says air pollution is a major health hazard. And Kim says it has income and health impacts.
Exactly. Thank you for those. So I appreciate the fact that y'all know that air pollution is definitely connected to negative deleterious health outcomes. And so I'll get into that a little bit. And definitely because of the concentration and the diversification of the types of sources, particularly traffic sources. I may use the term, I'll use it now, traffic-related air pollution. Many of the pollutants that are associated with combustion of fossil fuels, whether it be gasoline, whether it be diesel, those are combustion byproducts. Those pollutants are definitely found in some ways higher concentrations in urban areas because of the amount of commuter traffic that we have in our large metro areas. So that would be DC, Baltimore, in our region, and of course beyond our region. Think about places like Atlanta, which has really bad traffic. LA, as y'all know, has really bad traffic. New York City, even with their really extensive advanced public transit system, still has a lot of traffic of related pollution as well.
Tracy states in the chat, you can't always smell it.
Exactly. So that's all. Thank you. So I was going back. Thank you, Tracy, for Beth's comment. So you can't always see it. You can't always smell it. So those are really important. And you think about, standpoint of carbon monoxide poisoning, right? We know that, during extreme weather events, when people may lose power, particularly extreme winter storms, we see individuals end up, unfortunately, passing away from carbon monoxide poisoning because they can't see it, they can't smell it. And because they don't have an energy source, right, a fuel source during that power outage. And you know what happened to the extreme winter storm was it last year in Texas. We saw a number of people who use charcoal grills, who also use their cars in their garage as a form of keeping their families warm. And they unfortunately got carbon monoxide poisoning and died. So you tend to see more carbon monoxide poisonings that happen during the wintertime, right? And so that's an important one. Any other things that folks you already know about air pollution?
I could be wrong, but doesn't it move around? So if an area is contributing to it, it might not be the area affected by those actions. Exactly.
So particulate matter, which I would get into, it's a pollutant that's associated with the combustion of fossil fuels like coal. And so you think about coal-fired power plants and gas-fired power plants. So a lot of particulate matter that we see in the DC area is actually from the Ohio River Valley. It's not locally produced particulate matter. So you have long range transport. And also think about it. We know we have forest fires in California. We experience that pollution, that wildfire pollution in our part of the country. Remember, was it 2 years ago we had the fires in Australia? And actually that wildfire pollution crossed over and impacted our country. So we can have long range transport of air pollutants across the globe. Even some of I think the desert storms in Africa, some of that material can pass over in long range transport and impact the US. And then also there's this thing about persistent organic pollutants. It's a big issue in Alaska. A lot of those persistent organic pollutants, air pollution, ends up in Alaska from other sources. And of course, a lot of our greenhouse gas emissions in our part of the country, we talk about the environmental debt or the green debt that we have for South America. Think about the Amazon and the fact that a lot of pollution that's impacting low middle income countries is not produced by those countries. It's produced by more developed countries because we have this long range transport of pollution. So that's a really important one. Anything else before we move on? Okay, and sorry I can't get into real slide view. I don't know how to do slide view in Google, so I want to remove the slides. But I want to keep it this way. Hopefully this is fine for everyone. So I'm gonna go to the next slide. So So we're going to talk about air pollution. Why should we care about air pollution? You already had a little bit of environmental discussion last week, but I'll connect it back to environmental justice. And as many of you stated in the chat, it's really about our health, right? And I'm going to break down why it's so important to address air pollution and really improve air quality. And then we'll not necessarily have a full mapping activity, that's a later exercise, but just give you a little bit of opportunity to look up what's your air quality, what is it like in your neighborhood? So you think about air pollution, we know that the earth is, our Earth's atmosphere is made of certain chemicals, certain gases, and a lot of the air pollution that we have in this country is due to our industrial activities. So you can link it back to the Industrial Revolution beginning in the late 1700s. So you have both outdoor pollution, which is called ambient pollution, and you also have indoor pollution. Now, I focus a lot in my work on ambient pollution, and the purpose of this project is really on ambient outdoor pollution, but you know that a lot of the pollution outside is able to, due to intrusion, is able to move inside of buildings. And we actually spend 9% of our time indoors. So we have to be aware of indoor air quality too. And with the pandemic, we even spending more time indoors, right? And so that's just something to think about. And the pollutant is a harmful contaminant. So you have natural processes, right, where we have, our different, cycles. And so you can have natural sources of air pollution, which we like to call biogenic emissions. So whether it be volcanoes or emissions from trees, right? You also have, man-made, or the term is anthropogenic sources of air pollution, which again, as I said already, can be mobile sources, as you can see from the graphic, and also stationary sources. And we also have area sources too, which I will define later. And then in many of our sources, when it comes to our work in the Mid-Atlantic, it's going to be, again, due to living in a city. Think about how we have our urban ecosystems, right? Social ecological systems, and we have housing in urban areas, we have transportation networks, right? But then also many of us live in suburban areas where you have, commuter and transportation corridors and transportation arteries into the cities. And we also live in ex-urban areas, which is a cool term for rural areas. So in our region, it would be, for example, folks who live in Delaware commuting long distance to DC, or folks who work in DC who live in Charles County, right? And so think about, and that's another term for that that's not in our presentation, is urban sprawl. We have sprawl development, we have sprawled housing infrastructure, sprawl, far dispersed transportation infrastructure, which means we're gonna have a huge footprint when it comes to our transportation infrastructure and also our greenhouse gas emissions and those co-pollutants that are released when we combust fossil fuels to get us from our homes in our suburban or rural neighborhoods to the urban neighborhood. And then of course, it's just not fossil fuels that are burned by our commuter vehicles, whether it be our cars, right? It's also vehicles that are used for public transit, if they're not electrified, right? Could be burning fossil fuels like our buses, and also some of our rail could be, using fossil fuels for the transport of goods. And also we have construction vehicles, large, medium duty vehicles, heavy duty vehicles, construction vehicles, as I said, would be also burning fossil fuels that emit, these pollutants of concern. Let me see. So when you think about air quality, it's a measurement of how clean or polluted the area is, and it changes day to day. So good air quality is clean and free of pollutants, smog, dust, and smoke. So when you think about smoke, think about, again, tailpipe emissions, whether it be from your personal vehicle, whether it's a car or a truck, or it could be from again a medium duty, heavy duty vehicle, or it could be emissions smoke that's coming from the smoke stacks that you see from a stationary source of pollution. And then you think about dust. That's a really qualitative term, but a quantitative term for dust, or a more scientific term for dust, is particulate matter. So I'll talk about that more, and I'll talk about how particulate matter comes in different sizes and how it can impact health in different ways. But when you think about, our regulatory schema in the US, As you know, the US EPA, or Environmental Protection Agency, was founded in 1970. One of the oldest environmental regulations in the country is the Clean Air Act. So the Clean Air Act basically regulates air quality, right? And so we use data from stationary sensors, what we call federal reference method monitors, or satellite data, to measure pollutants of concern. And these pollutants are called they're criteria air pollutants that are regulated under the National Ambient Air Quality Standards, the NAAQS, NAAQS. So you ever hear that acronym? That's NAAQS. And so pollutants that we measure that are criteria air pollutants include ozone, which is a secondary pollutant, that's produced from mixtures of, VOCs, NO2, some of these other combustion byproducts with sunlight to produce ozone. So you heard of the ozone alert days, right? And those usually happen during the summertime. You had carbon monoxide, which you've already talked about, nitrogen dioxide, which is NO2. NO2 is really one of the main traffic-related air pollutants. So when I use the term trap, one of the primary traps is going to be NO2, nitrogen dioxide. Sulfur dioxide, again, is a sulfurous compound. It's also a combustion byproduct. Again, when we burn fossil fuels, think again, gasoline, when we burn diesel, when we burn natural gas, which is a euphemism, right? When we burn gas in our homes. So, but again, SO2 is produced. And then particulate matter, the acronym for particulate matter is PM. There's different sizes, PM10, PM2.5, and PM1, but I'll talk more about those later. So when you think about this air quality index, this gives you a kind of a semi-quantitative way to figure out is how's your air quality each day. And remember, it changes day to day. So green, if it's green, that means it's good. And the values of the index of 0 to 50, so air quality is satisfactory and air pollution poses little or no risk. When it's yellow, it's moderate. The values of the index are 51 to 100. Air quality is acceptable, but there may be risk for some people. Those are unusually sensitive to air pollution. I'll talk about those groups. And then orange is unhealthy for sensitive groups, 101 to 150. So these are going to be folks who have underlying health conditions. They're immunocompromised. Could be, folks with asthma, individuals who are elderly, someone who may have already had some type of adverse health event, maybe have been hospitalized previously for a respiratory condition. And so the general public is less likely to be affected. Red is bad, y'all. And we know this from, red light, green light, stop, right? So red is unhealthy. So that's 151 to 200. Some members of the general public who are healthy may experience health effects, but those are in those sensitive groups are going to be at much higher risk of experience serious deleterious health effects. And in purple, which is, I'm not sure the world is ending kind of level, but it could be you've had some type of, remember a few months back, we had that coal pile explosion in Baltimore, right? Coal pile explosion. If there's some type of major toxic release, remember what's the Crota facility? Y'all remember Crota facility in Delaware? Was that 2 Christmases ago? Where they had a major release in Delaware. I think it was in, what's Crota in Delaware? Is it Crota in Dover? No, Wilmington. Crota facility in Wilmington, Delaware. Or if you live in like the Houston Ship Channel, I'm not sure how many of y'all are familiar with the Houston Ship Channel, but the Houston Ship Channel is the North America's largest petrochemical corridor. So any of y'all ever been to Houston, when you get off that plane and you go outside, you smell chemicals. You're smelling petrochemicals in Houston. So you've been not necessarily been exposed to these particular pollutants, but you've been exposed to volatile organic compounds. So if there's ever a toxic release in Houston, remember there's been a series of explosions of petrochemical operations in Houston. You've seen those in the news in Texas the last few years. The air pollution is probably purple. So when you have some type of disaster, some type of chemical fire, more than likely the levels are going to be purple. And the maroon are hazardous, 301 and higher. So that's a health warning, emergency conditions. Everyone is more likely to be affected. So you got to, have like local response, get people out. You get a reverse dialing. They dial your, your home phone and say, you must leave the premises. So in 2005, January 2005, in Granville, South Carolina, for example, there was a train derailment. The largest chlorine spill in the history of the country happened in Granville. This is in South Carolina. Over 1,000 people were exposed to chlorine gas, 9 people died. That's an example of maroon. where if you're exposed, it may be immediate death, okay? Not to bring down the energy, just want to share. That's an example of, a situation where maroon levels will be expected when you have that type of chemical disaster. So I want everybody to go, another chance for me to stop talking, for this to be more interactive. Go to airnow.gov and type in your zip code, your city, and just figure out, see what your AQI is right now. So if y'all can do that, so go to www.airnow.gov, type in your zip code, and just see what your AQI is. And then we can, y'all can kind of shout it out like we did before.
This is Marvin. Mine's is 32.
Okay, so you're in the green zone, all right? If you go back to the chart. So who else wants to shout out? Y'all can come off you can come off of mute and just shout it out. Go ahead.
Mine is 35. Still in the
Okay,
green zone.
you're in the green zone as well.
I'm 32 also.
Okay. Anyone else?
31 over here in Gwynn Oak.
Okay.
I'm 35 in Arlington.
Okay, cool.
I'm in Colorado and I'm 80.
Oh, so you are in moderate. Interesting.
I'm in moderate. Yep. In
So-
beautiful, sunny, clear Boulder.
So are you near any traffic sources? Is it the topography is part of the reason? Maybe you have trapped gases from combustion byproducts. What do you think the reason why it's in the yellow? Yellow is not bad, but why do you think it may be in yellow zone?
There's a lot of traffic in Boulder, in Colorado in general, a lot of cars, much less public transportation, more reliance on cars, I think. And Denver, we're north of Denver, but Denver has a lot of industry and very bad pollution. And the mountains, I think, block it from going.
Yeah,
anyway.
you probably get the mountains are blocking it in, and then you got long range transport. So it's just like sits. Like I'm a hardcore Steelers fan, and Pittsburgh has some really bad pollution, probably because Pittsburgh is, it's kind of in a bowl, right? So you got all those, anybody knows about Pittsburgh, it has a lot of bridges. And, of course, they call it Three Rivers for a reason, right? It has a lot of bridges. They have a lot of truck traffic. I've never seen so many bridges. I think Pittsburgh has more bridges than any other city, I think, in the world. Is that right? I think that's right. That means you have a lot of commuter traffic. You have a lot of truck traffic in Pittsburgh. And then you have so I'll just use it as an example of, and then you have like the fact that Pittsburgh sits sort of in the valley, and you have the surrounding topography, which traps a lot of that pollution. Anyone else wants to jump in?
This is Beth. It's 32 in Rockville.
Okay, cool.
And does Pittsburgh still have a lot of steel manufacturing? And
not as much as it used to. It does still have a lot of industry. So there's what's really interesting. Pittsburgh, Carnegie Mellon has done a Carnegie Mellon University, of course. They have done some of the leading edge work in developing low cost sensors. So when we do the low cost sensor session, a lot of that early low cost sensor work actually happened in at Carnegie Mellon. And so I think they have a Purpleware network in I think they have a Purpleware network, but what's more important, what's kind of not cool, but interesting is they have something called Smell My City. So Carnegie Mellon, they developed an app called Smell My City. So in some places, you may not be able to have, federal reference method monitors, which are really the best high grade, high standard monitors that are used for regulatory purposes, right? You may not be able to have access to low cost sensors. So what they do is you use your nose. So they ask people to basically note what they smell outside. And that data has been shown to track well with particulate matter readings in Pittsburgh. So you can use it as to fill a gap. Well, we have a sensor over this part of Pittsburgh. We have a sensor here. We don't have a sensor here. But if people are smelling the pollution and then you can track it, you can see a correlation between the positive correlation between the PM levels, particulate matter levels, and the odor ratings using Smell My Cities. So that's actually something we haven't been able to use in our work yet. But I just want to offer that as another tool when we talk about community science that can be used as part of community science work.
My grandparents were from Pittsburgh, and my grandfather used to say there was so much particulate in the air, he had to like change his shirt partway through the day because his collars would get so grubby. So
Yeah, your
it's
clothes
cleaned up from then, I guess.
it's gotten better, but also people's cars get covered. Like in Baltimore, near the coal pile. I mean, it's a huge, it's just, I mean, y'all can go online and look it up. You can look at the coal pile explosion in Baltimore. It's a huge mountain of coal, right? So think about the coal dust as the wind blows. So it covers the ground, it covers people's cars. So that's gonna be similar to living near a steel mill. You're gonna have that material is gonna fall out the air. Y'all know, deposition, you have dry deposition and wet deposition. What goes up must come down, right? So it'll come down in either dry form or through rain. And rainfall is really good about clearing out the atmosphere, but it's gonna fall on your cars. And so people have, layers of material, that stuff on their cars.
What about,
Oh, go ahead. Oh.
I just had a question about the air pollution from fracking natural gas.
Mhm.
There's a lot of fracking going on in Pennsylvania. So does that generate air pollution while the fracking is going on?
Yeah, fracking is there. There've been a number of studies that looked at traditional oil and gas wells, which is not fracking, and hydraulic fracturing. So the air pollution is one of the biggest risks associated with fracking, particularly on those well pads. And so we actually did a study some years ago to look at the potential public health impacts of fracking in Maryland. I worked on a team, basically, I think it was 2013, 2014, that looked at what are some of the impacts of fracking. I mean, maybe Ariel, that you can put the study in the chat. We did a hazard risk ranking for different adverse impacts from fracking. And one of the impacts was in red, was from air pollution. And so you have particulate matter. You also have volatile organic compounds. And so you have the fracking, it's the actual process itself, air pollution. You have the large trucks that's associated with the facilities, right? And you also have the compressor stations that are associated with the operations as well. So there's multiple sources of air pollution associated with fracking. And so the literature back then was probably really limited. It was more emerging, but there are a lot of studies that talk about air pollution impacts from fracking, and then the association between air pollution impacts, the relation between air pollution exposures and health effects for folks who live near well pads and compressor stations versus folks who do not live there. So it's like a cohort study, right? So you got basically doing a comparison between people who live near the well pads and the air pollution levels versus people who don't live the well pads, who don't have the same air pollution exposure, and looking at the differences in risk and differences in the odds of adverse health outcomes. So you have higher odds of having asthma living near a fracking pad compared to someone else, or you may have a higher odds of exposure to particulate matter compared to So there's a large body of emerging research looking at air pollution impacts. One of my colleagues, Dr. Jill Johnston, has done some work, not necessarily on fracking, but more on oil and gas wells, emissions from oil and gas wells in the LA area. So she's at the University of Southern California, but there's a number of studies that have come out of West Virginia, actually University of Colorado too. They've done some of the initial early work on looking at risk assessments related to fracking at the University of Colorado School of Public Health. But yes, and then folks at Columbia as well. So there's a lot of work, just to be more succinct. There's a lot of work looking at air pollution impacts from fracking out there.
Checking in from
Just to update everyone, we're talking about Pittsburgh. So Kobe, I grew up in a mill town that's now not a mill town anymore, but the AQI is 30 there. And I looked up the river where in Clairton, there's a coke processing plant that's part of the steelmaking process. It's 30 there as well.
Interesting. So probably the upgrades to the control technologies may be part of it. The reason why it's low. It also could be, remember, this AQI is informed by monitors. If a monitor isn't there, doesn't mean it's not a problem. You get what I'm saying? So if there's not a monitoring system actually monitoring pollution at those locations, then it's not saying that it's actually good air. It's just a data limitation. And that's also another reason why we need to have low-cost sensors, so we can get what the term is hyper-local air quality data. So we need to get granular data, so we don't have any gaps in the monitoring system. So just kind of step back and explain that real quick. I know I'm kind of jumping around a little bit. Part of the problem with the AQI is informed by a limited number of monitors. And many of these monitors are not located where the actual sources are. They're located in the background area, so it can be representative of air quality for a certain population density, but they're not really located near sources that may be more area sources or these large major sources. So there is a limitation to relying on the AQI. The AQI is only as good as the data that's been input into it, okay?
To your point for that, I'm reporting in from New Jersey, so.
Where in New Jersey?
Well, Montclair.
Where's that?
Montclair is right above the Oranges, right above Newark. It's not far.
It's about 12
Okay.
miles west of Manhattan. We're 20 minutes drive probably from Newark. So where I am, it's 42. And I also
Interesting.
checked Newark, it's also 42. And I put in the chat about the Ironbound section of Newark, which is known as Sacrifice Zone. You probably know about it.
Yeah.
And
I work with Anna Baptista. Yeah, I know Ironbound. I know for about, I don't know, 1995,
Right.
2005. I know honestly it's 2005.
the
yeah,
Ironbound Community Corporation. So I just Googled that there's a bunch of UCC churches in Newark, and I'm wondering about collaborating with them to maybe get some monitors in their churches.
Yeah,
Because that might be one of the gaps you're talking about, that there's.
It's a huge gap, y'all. You cannot rely. I'm not saying it's good for education purposes. It's not good for decision making. You cannot rely on AQI for decision making purposes, because it's only as good as the data that's been input into it. And we have a sparse network of federal reference method monitors, FRMs. And so that's the reason why we've had this emergence of community science, because folks have been exposed to a mixture of chemicals and pollutants from mobile and stationary sources. And the reference method monitor in many ways is 20 miles from your house. It's 20 miles away. And they're saying, hey, your air quality is great. It's not measuring what's happening in my house. So I'm an environmental scientist, everyone. So what we call is we call it exposure misclassification. Okay, you're saying that the exposure level that a population is having 20 miles from me is the same level I'm experiencing here. We all know that's bad science. Okay, so that's the reason why there's been a huge push for low-cost sensors like the purple air or the aero qual or any number of sensors. The technology has been really good at innovative as measuring particulate matter. It hasn't been that great on looking at other pollutants like volatile organic compounds. We have something called TVOCs where they measure total volatile organic compounds, but you can't get the individual compounds like benzene or toluene or xylene or formaldehyde, which y'all know are all carcinogens, which are also, combustion byproducts, right? And then they're also not great at measuring ozone, but some are good at measuring NO2, some are really good at measuring particulate matter, but they're not great at measuring the chemical mixture. So the technology's gotten better to make sure we have, again, more coverage, geographic coverage, but it's not it's better than what it used to be. Now, there's also a lot of work being done to use satellite data. So one of my colleagues, Dr. Susan Annenberg, who's at George Washington, she uses satellite data to get very granular, more specific, high quality, accurate data on NO2 levels. So she's been doing that work. So that's more reliable than the FRMs, the Federal Reference Method monitors. And then I have another partner called Aclima. Y'all can look up Aclima, ACLIMA. They're social benefits companies. I'm about to give a commercial, like an advertisement. They're the world's leader in mobile-based air quality monitoring. So basically what they do is they use Google Cars, okay, where they go around with Google Cars and they measure pollutants block by block. So they found that in their work in California, they found air pollution levels 500 times higher particulate matter than the nearest FRM, the nearest EPA monitor, okay? So that shows you, so Aria, if you can find that recent study, or even, we have it in one of our grant proposals, actually. There's some text that you can go from our grant proposals, but they found levels 500 times higher than the EPA standard. So my point is, let's not take the AQI as for more educational purposes, but the data that's being used to inform it is limited. And who said that college? They have churches in Newark. In Newark again. Say your name again, please.
That's me, Tracy.
Okay, thank you, Tracy. So we actually, as part of our partnership work, we are actually working with Kim Gaddy, who's in the South Ward in Newark. And we currently have a Purple Air Network in collaboration with her group, which is the South Ward Neighborhood Association, South Ward Civic Association, I think, or Neighborhood Association, and also New Jersey DEP. So we could easily expand our work to include churches in New Jersey. Happy to do so. We have the resources to do it. And it makes sense to do it based on this premise that we do not have enough monitors to get accurate data to know what folks exposed to at the neighborhood level in our communities.
Professor Wilson, I'm glad to hear you say that, because that was the question I was going to raise for a parking lot conversation between our leads for this partnership. So we should definitely talk about that.
Yeah, no, this is good. And no, good. Thank y'all for keeping me from the slides, because I want to be in professor mode. But no, this is really important, because right now we're talking about the gaps, y'all. And the reason why we need low-cost sensors, why we need to use satellite data, why we use mobile monitoring, and why we need to use citizen science, community science. Because y'all already explained that you're talking about these AQ, the AQIs. Oh my, it's 30, it's 42. I'm in Colorado. I got all this traffic. Doesn't make any sense. I'm in Newark. Why is it so low? Because again, it's not enough monitors, y'all. We know the air pollution levels are higher than that, so it's not representative. That AQI is not actually represented on the real ground experiences that people have. And so we got to ground truth that the data that goes into the AQI, okay? And that's why, again, community science is important. Okay, so I'm gonna keep moving unless there, okay, go ahead. Is that Tracy again?
Yeah, so it's Tracy again. So you'll let me know how we can connect to move forward to connect with those churches, or what?
I'll let Reverend Silver facilitate that, but we have the resources that can be used to buy the sensors, and then we can probably connect the churches to our partner. Because I don't work specifically directly with Ironbound. I'm really familiar with them, good colleagues, but our active community science network and doing air quality monitoring, the Purple Warehouse, is actually with Kim Gaddy in South Ward in Newark.
Right, I know that name. Okay, thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. So you think about, again, these pollutants we're talking about. You got good, so I talked about ozone. We'll make sure I say there's good ozone. Y'all know the ozone layer, right? That's good. We need to keep that. We need to plug that hole, right? But there's bad ozone, which is a ground level ozone, okay? So when you think about ozone, again, we have these combustion byproducts. Remember, we have greenhouse gases like CO2 and methane, climate forcing gases. Then we have these co-pollutants that could cause, health effects like CO, NO2. So there's multiple sources, I said before, vehicle emissions, so mobile sources, stationary sources. And so you think about these chemicals combined with sunlight to produce ozone. But the health effects, health impacts from ozone worsen pre-existing lung conditions. It can irritate your throats and lungs. Many pollutants can irritate the nose, eyes, and throat, right? Cause greater odds of respiratory infection. One of the things I like to say about COVID-19, y'all, and why it's disproportionately impacted certain communities, right? Communities of color, is because a lot of folks of color live in communities with what? Poor air quality. So think about, COVID-19 looking around. If you have lived in a community with poor air quality, you are an easy target because you have reduced what? Lung capacity. You have a comorbid condition, so it's easy for you to get a respiratory infection, okay? So you have lead issues. That's another criteria pollutant, which I didn't say earlier. Lead is a criteria pollutant. So you think about metal process. We talked about steel mills and lead acid batteries, waste incinerators. So you think about, I'm not sure how many of you know about incinerators. We have a big incinerator in Baltimore, the Williburton incinerator, and also utilities. So health impacts, we know that lead is a neurocognitive toxicant, and impact your brain, but also can impact other organ systems. Particulate matter can come from both biogenic sources, right? So trees, volcanoes. You also can come from mainly anthropogenic, man-made sources. So again, combustion of fossil fuels. I mentioned diesel, gas, gasoline, natural gas, gasoline, and also dust. So you have different sizes of particulate matter. And health impacts, cardiovascular and respiratory impacts. Sulfur dioxide comes from combustion, again, at power plants, combustion of fossil fuels, and some have some of the same health impacts. So you see across all these pollutants, many of them have some of the same health impacts. Cardiovascular health impacts, respiratory health impacts. Let me keep going here. So when you think about particulate matter, you heard me use the term, so 10, 2.5, and 1. So PM10 is 10 microns diameter, 2.5 is 2.5 microns diameter, and 1 is 1 micron diameter. So you see this photo, you can see that, and remember I said before, like dust, like it's a quality term, dust, but the scientific term, it would be particulate matter. So particulate matter is basically dust in the air, which comes in different sizes. So look at this photo, it shows you the size of a human, strand of human hair is 50 to 70 microns in diameter, right? But look at the size of PM10. So that's like dust, pollen, mold. That's less than 10 microns in diameter, okay? And look at the size of particulate matter. It's less than 2.5 microns in diameter. And then PM1 would be less than 1 micron diameter, okay? So the big stuff you sneeze out, the smaller particles, 2.5 and 1, are the ones that can have the deleterious health effects, right? So particulate matter, 2.5 is probably one of the most dangerous pollutant as relates to public health. It can get into your body, right? Damage your alveoli, your lung sacs, get into your circulatory system. It can also deliver, because chemicals will be attached to it, so it can deliver chemicals to different organ systems. It can deliver chemicals to your brain, right? But particulate matter can cause elevated blood pressure, cause asthma and asthma attacks, cause heart disease. You know, this is from the literature, this is from the scientific research, contribute to diabetes, contribute to Alzheimer's, cause cancer, of course, cause birth defects, low birth weight babies, increase infant mortality. It can cause premature mortality and also reduce life expectancy. So Dr. Annenberg has done some studies that look at differences in pollution levels across DC, for example. And she's found that there's differential concentrations of these combustion byproducts, the co-pollutants I talked about, particulate matter NO2 in Ward 1 versus Ward 7 to 8, and also differential health outcomes that can be associated with those differential pollutant levels. So air pollution kills, and air pollution causes health disparities, okay? And we see that in the research. I just want to emphasize DC is an example of that, because there's ongoing work showing those impacts. So let me go to the next one. Hold on a second. So we also have already talked about carbon monoxide. Nitrogen dioxide is, again, one of the most important traffic-related air pollutants. So it can cause some of the same health effects, you know, versus lung conditions, irritates eyes, nose, and throat, contribute to asthma, cause breathing problems. And then volatile organic compounds. So you think about that new car smell, hold your breath, y'all. That's VOCs. Like, I'm so excited about my new car. You should open the doors and let the windows down. Those are VOCs, everyone, okay? Like, man, I love this car. It smells so good. No, it doesn't. That's bad for you. I don't understand that. But those are VOCs. So you got VOCs can off gas. So you think about when you just paint your room and you smell, that's a VOC. You know, you got pesticides. When you clean supplies, now we all don't do it, but you should be wearing a mask when you clean the house, because you've been exposed to VOCs, okay? When your new furniture, ooh, this new furniture is shiny, it smells good. No, it doesn't. That's a VOC, y'all, okay? So VOCs they're very pervasive, and that's a really good word to use, right? So they're just not a combustion byproduct. They also off gas from paints, glues, furniture. And so they can impact, you know, burn your eyes, nose, and throat, cause headaches, loss of coordination, concentration, damage your different organ systems, liver, kidney. One of the interesting things that I want to just point out real quick, and I will keep going, so I want to, you know, get too deep into this. When we burn diesel, like children are riding school buses, right? When we burn diesel, you know, they're exposed to VOCs, when they're in that vehicle. And if they're walking to school by, you know, roadways where they have a lot of traffic, school bus traffic, right? Short-term exposure to diesel exhaust can impact the coordination, the concentration, and focus of children. So just want to add this, so there's a children's health element to this as well when you think about air pollution. I'm trying to scare anybody, I just want to share. And that's why we need on the solution side, we need to really focus on trying to electrify a lot of our fleet vehicles, our school buses, our postal vehicles, you know, of course, all of our commuter vehicles. You know, we know under the Inflation Reduction Act that there's a $7,500 tax credit now for folks to buy an electric vehicle. Unfortunately, you got to have a lot of upfront money to buy that car. So I think they need to fix that. Now, one benefit, I'm not going to, this is a tangent, one benefit of the new IRA, right, is the fact that you get a $4,500 tax credit for buying a used electric car, which means that should be more, it should allow for more people across income strata to now access electric vehicles. So we get more of the gas guzzling vehicles off the road. And you see that California, Governor Newsom made a executive order that there were no more gas guzzling cars sold in California after 2035. Now, under a previous governor of Virginia, something happened where Virginia has to also adhere to that rule. So you're going to see more progressive sort of statements and mandates that more states are going to say, we're not going to allow for the purchase of gas guzzling vehicles, the use of gas guzzling vehicles. But I think part of the problem with that is, I know it's tangential, the IRA is helpful, but it's not provide enough incentives, enough opportunity for people across the income strata to access those electric vehicles. I just want to share, that's one critique of that, but there's still some good stuff there. And then you have smog as well. It's another thing to deal with when we think about places where we have this mix of air pollution and impacts visibility. The haze that you see, okay? And so air pollution can impact you across your life course. So it can impact, the developing fetus, the sensitive window susceptibility for children. It can impact development. It can impact, it just doesn't cause respiratory effects. It can impact reproduction as well, okay? It can impact adults. It can impact the elderly. So these slides talk more about the kind of respiratory and cardiovascular impacts, but air pollution can, have reproductive impacts, development impacts. It can also mutate your DNA. And it can also have neurodegenerative, neurocognitive impacts as well. So that's why we have to do a better job of monitoring air pollution and then use the data as part of decision support tools to, again, get decision-making to mitigate, to remove those sources, or at least try to find a way to reduce the impact. So having more trees, for example, will be a way, because trees act as our lungs, right? So a lot of research has shown that in communities that have been historically segregated or redlined, and y'all know about redlining, hey, your neighborhood, you got a lot of folks of color, we don't like y'all, we're gonna give y'all red, we're not gonna give y'all investments, we're gonna disinvest and divest. All the money the tax base leaves, all the grocery stores leave, and then we build a highway through your neighborhood, right? We love building highways through your neighborhood. 1956, National Highway Defense Act. Hey, black folks, brown folks, we're gonna destroy your neighborhood, build a highway through. Hey, what's a little pollution for your neighborhood, right? Hey, you over here. Hey, we like you, about white people, we like you. Hey, we're gonna give you green. We're gonna give you all the investments you want. All the, we're not gonna disinvest, we're gonna invest in you. That's real, y'all. I know y'all may talk about that last week, but that's part of the reason why you see differential burden of mobile stationary sources of pollution and the differential impacts of air pollution because of our policies, like segregation related policies, redlining, our highway transportation policies. And that has, what's passed as prologue, right? The past policies impact current conditions. So you have some communities that get basically trapped by air pollution. And also remember that air pollution contributes to urban heat islands too. I really don't have slides on urban heat islands here, but you think about those climate forcing gases, right? The ones that, impact, contribute to climate related perturbations. So they're overburdened by air pollution, and they also have differential climate effects too. And one of those issues when you live in an urban heat island is the fact that you may be exposed to have more heat issues. So air pollution, that's a chemical stressor, right? But heat is a physical stressor. So think about the combination of both exposure to a chemical stressor and a heat stressor during a pandemic, which is a biological stressor. Okay, just wanted to throw that in as a quick point, but I'll keep moving because I feel like I'm more in professor mode right now. I want to get to more interaction. Let's find another interaction slide so y'all can give me some. Oh, here we go, interaction slide. Okay, cool. So do you have any questions or comments or thoughts? I mean, this has been good discussion to this point about what I've shared so far about air pollution. And y'all can just, chime in again, so I can stop talking so much, because again, I'm a professor and that's what we do. Thoughts? You can come off mute and share. This is not a shy group. Hey, look at, we only had slide 12, y'all. Wow, okay.
Bueller.
I don't think this is a 50 slide presentation, so we should be good. If it was, we'd be here till like 9 o'clock. at this pace. But go ahead, Reverend Silver.
I was going to ask Professor, could you talk a little bit more about, I know this is more about air quality in terms of what's happening outside of the buildings in which we sort of occupy for our day-to-day lives. But you struck me when you mentioned that new car smell.
Yeah, don't hold your breath, let the windows down, man.
Can you talk a little bit more about sort of, you got to get into the deep of it, but a little bit more in just terms of, I mean, we know cleaning products, et cetera. Can you talk a little bit more about sort of the things outside of not using those chemicals in our homes? What are sort of some ways in which we sort of eliminate or reduce the amount of pollution inside our homes?
Yeah, no, thank you for that question. Now, I was in an interesting panel a few months back, and I was reminded by a panelist that, yeah, we spend 90% of our time indoors. And I think the EPA can look this up, maybe look it up and put it in the chat. I think air pollution levels indoors are actually 4 to 6 times worse than outdoors. Okay, so that's partly due to multiple sources. So you have intrusion, right, from outdoors. So you have your windows open, right? You have pollution come inside. It also can do, you can have because you have poor HVAC systems, so you have a poor air exchange rate, right? So you have stuff come from inside. And then we have sources of air pollution, as we stated, cleaning products, personal care products as well. I mean, when you spray, some people, I was in the grocery today, like someone has a cologne on, like that's a VOC, I don't want to smell your VOC. So that cologne was strong, like that Old Spice, with the green bottle. Y'all know the green bottle Old Spice. Old school for y'all. Yeah, it was like, it was strong, right? And then you have other types of, so propellants. So when you use a propellant, that could be, you end up in a VOC as well. So when we use hairsprays and stuff like that, or we use a can spray for cleaning. And also think about, I know this is bad, but y'all know y'all were probably younger, and you had your children. And I said something, you did it, there's nothing wrong. I mean, you just gotta pray over it. Did y'all use those little bombs, those pesticide bombs, right? Those little rave bombs, right? And just leave it and go? Did anybody do that?
Yep.
Just pray over it. Hopefully it's fine. But I had no idea. But I was a kid. And I was exposed to that, right? Or this is off subject, I'm gonna come back. But even younger in Mississippi, the mosquito truck. We used to follow the truck. What was spraying for mosquitoes? The things then, like now you wouldn't do now. But also pesticide exposure is also another issue inside. So you got, and then also our cooking. So if you're using gas, for example, or even using electric, right? But if you're using gas, you can have combustion byproducts from using gas or electric appliances. So you have those multiple sources and you have the glues, et cetera. So I think part of what to do is, the response to the question, I mean, we have to use different pest management approaches. So we're not using propellants, creating VOCs. I think using more natural products could be a way to reduce, kind of changing our cleaning behavior. So we're using less VOCs as we clean, and also trying to, remove personal care products that can lead to exposure of VOCs. And then of course, as you see in New York State, I think they're the first state in the country, I'm not sure what year, but to outlaw gas appliances, right? And so that's going to help with reduction of combustion byproducts, climate forcing gas that's been produced, because buildings are one of the biggest sources of greenhouse gas emissions of co-pollutants. Heating our homes. And so I think moving from gas to electric will help with that as well. So we have to advocate for that, right? To have a policy like that in your state, whether it be in Colorado, in New Jersey. And New Jersey, they did pass a cumulative impacts bill, I think in 2020, that could be leveraged for that. There's other states like Massachusetts that are trying to have some progressive laws. Washington State just passed a progressive climate law last year, the Climate Commitment Act. And then Maryland, we just passed this session. We passed up to the 4th time trying to pass the Climate Solutions Now Act. Illinois passed a progressive climate law to, I think, shut down all coal-fired and gas-fired power plants by 2035 too. So I think part of what to do is change our individual behavior, Reverend Silver, but also advocate for policies too. So hopefully that helps. Any other questions before we move on? Anybody else want to chime in?
Can I ask about the mosquito sprays. Some communities still have trucks that come through and spray, like Mosquito Joe or Mosquito Squad. What's the solution? I mean, do we have to have a state law against it, or is there anything we can do?
It's a tough one because if you don't, I mean, I don't want to get into philosophical discussion, an argument with myself, because one side of me says, we need to, control mosquitoes because with climate change, right, they are vectors for various diseases, right? But we have to be careful because if we overuse, that can reduce the effectiveness of it, right? But also that can lead to adverse health effects for those that in the community we're spraying, particularly if there's a high rate of spray. There's, exposure is all about your concentration, right? How often, frequency, magnitude, right? So how often are they spraying? And are they giving people notice they're spraying? So they can spray and then people standing inside their homes, that's different. But their homes have poor HVAC systems, and you can have intrusion of it inside the homes. That could be a problem. And there are people outside playing. When I was a kid, we were playing, we were following trucks. That should not be happening today, right? So some basic education to share from the local environmental health department, because they're probably the primary entity where that's happening, will be useful. Because I still think there's a benefit to having some type of control. We have to have mosquito control, right? But it's kind of a lose-lose situation with climate change. I'm not saying we're going to lose against, we're going to fight, but it's not a good situation, right? So that's my response.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I was on the fence, but I tried my best, Linda, with my response. Okay, any other questions? Okay, I'll keep moving. So we talked a little bit, already about some of the differential impacts of air pollution, but why should we care? So we know that it causes major health harms, as y'all said earlier on about what you knew about air pollution. I think maybe you chimed in, health effects, and that's why we should care. Again, there's susceptible populations. Remember, vulnerability is extrinsic to you. So that's like social vulnerability, poverty, like your housing quality, not having health care, being underinsured, and susceptibility is intrinsic. It's a biological characteristic that makes you have a higher risk of some type of adverse condition, right? So you could be in a particular biological state, like you're a child. Children have a higher inhalation rate per kilogram body weight compared to adults. Also, some organ systems are still developing, right? The blood-brain barrier doesn't solidify to what age, was it 10 or so? So stuff can cross the blood-brain barrier easier, right? In the older adults, you may have comorbid conditions, frailty issues, immune systems breaking down. So you don't have the fighters to fight back against exposures, right? Typically, we have multiple exposures. And then people who are active outside. Now, you may be recreationalists who could be walking or biking in the areas where they're exposed, or people who are occupational exposures, right? Like some of those workers, the construction workers, are out there laying that asphalt, y'all. I don't see how they do it. Because you see them, they're not even wearing protective masks. Of course, when it's hot. I mean, I know it doesn't make sense with what I'm about to say. I don't want to be hot, but then you smell these hot gases, right? So occupational exposure is a big issue, particularly even with, there's been new work on looking at the issues of warehouse workers, right? And have all those trucks that come in and out of warehouses, think about the Amazon warehouses. And so that's another like occupational exposure issue. And also those warehouses, which was a separate issue, was connected. They're doing a lot of heat issues. So remember I talked about heat before. So occupational exposure could be exposed when you're outside, exposed to air pollution, high concentrated air pollution, but also dealing with high temperatures too. And then people with lung diseases, right, are most at risk from health harms from air pollution. So the World Health Organization has air quality guidelines and found in 2016 that 91% of people living in areas outside the WHO air quality guidelines that leads to 4.2 million premature deaths that year, and majority, primarily low and middle income countries. Now, we have these national ambient air quality standards for our criteria air pollutants. I'll restate them again: carbon monoxide, lead, sulfur dioxide, ozone, nitrogen dioxide, and particulate matter, both PM10, PM2.5. So we have standards. So if you're above this standard, like so the daily standard of exposure for a particular matter is 35 micrograms per meter cube. Okay, the annual standard is 12. But let me say this, y'all, just because you're below that standard doesn't mean people are not having health effects. Now, I believe that annual standard for particulate matter from the World Health Organization, at least their guidelines, is actually 5 micrograms per meter cube. 5, not 12. So what that means to me is our PM standard currently is not protective enough of people, particularly those who are more susceptible or who are more vulnerable, you know, because they where they live. You know, and that gets back to the environmental justice issue. 3 billion people risk health harms from household air pollution. So in some parts of the world, folks are, you know, with their cook stoves, they may be, you know, burning dung or other types of unrefined fuel materials that lead to higher exposure to indoor air pollutants from combustion. So VOCs, particulate matter, et cetera. In the Washington, Baltimore, Arlington area ranks number 22 American Lung Association list of most polluted U.S. cities by ozone. And again, a lot of ozone, again, the ground level ozone is secondary pollutant. So that's due to a lot of the traffic-related air pollution. So particulate matter, NO2, VOCs. And greater than 40% of Americans live in places with unhealthy levels of ozone or PM. That's a lot of people, y'all. And a lot of it, again, is due to stationary sources, but a lot of it's due to traffic. So if we could, again, electrify our vehicles, electrify our buildings, but definitely electrify our vehicles, we can have a major reduction in combustion byproducts. So let me keep going. So why should we care about air pollution? This gets to some of the environmental health disparities part. So, you know, burden disparities lead to exposure disparities, lead to risk disparities, lead to health disparities, right? And burden, burden of hazards, burden of locally wanted land uses. So people of color are greater than 3 times more likely to be breathing the most polluted air compared to the whites in the US. Greater than 1 million African Americans are living within half a mile of a natural gas facility. And natural gas, again, is a euphemism, I didn't say that before. Living in these facilities is really an example of environmental, injustice that we talked about last week. And so you think about the climate crisis. So when you have, fossil fuels, the dirty fossil fuel economy, right? A dirty fossil fuel infrastructure, that infrastructure is a major source of greenhouse gas emissions. So you think about the life cycle of fossil fuels. So getting back to the earlier question, I forget if it was from Beth or point from Beth earlier about fracking. So you think about extraction of fossil fuels, right? So whether it be traditional oil and gas wells or fracking, right? That's one part of the life cycle of fossil fuels. Then you have transport, compressor stations, and pipelines, right? You know about the EJ environmental issues of pipelines. Then you have refineries, where we refine fossil fuels. Think about the Cancer Alley in Louisiana. Think about the Houston Ship Channel again, North America's largest petrochemical corridor. Plate parts, I think New Jersey has refineries. I think in Newark has refineries. Richmond, California, and also those petrochemical operations where we take fossil fuels and turn them to other products, turn them to plastics, et cetera, right? So you have that. And then, of course, you have fossil fuels that are burned, either at power plants or burned in our vehicles. And then you have, sort of this wasted energy element with incinerators and also the waste products. So you think about the life cycle of fossil fuels. Those are contributors of greenhouse gas emissions and the co-pollutants. But so with climate change, you have seen increased temperatures. We know we've seen increased temperatures over the last 100 years or so or more. We see precipitation extremes. You can look at rainfall recently in Baltimore with the boil water alert advisory in Baltimore. I'm from Mississippi. Y'all know what's going on in Jackson, Mississippi. I got folks in Jackson. The fact that a major U.S. city doesn't have water, and they haven't had water for years. Like what just happened recently with all the major rainfall, it's not new, y'all. That's an example of environmental injustice, environmental racism too in Mississippi. You look at the issue of extreme weather events, extreme winter storms, extreme hurricanes. 5th anniversary of Hurricane Maria, did that just happen recently? It will happen. 5th anniversary of Hurricane Harvey. The 17th anniversary of Hurricane Katrina was August 29th. The first anniversary of Hurricane Ida was August 1st, August 29th of this year. Y'all had Hurricane Sandy that hit New Jersey, right? Hurricane Michael Hurricane Florence, they hit North Carolina recently. Hurricane Harvey again, they hit Houston. Hurricane Maria, they hit USVI, Puerto Rico, Florida. Y'all know what I'm talking about. Hurricanes, sea level rise, forest fires, droughts, right? So you got exposure pathways, extreme heat, poor air quality, reduced food and water quality, okay? Changes in infectious agents, getting back to the point, I think Linda, question she asked about spraying. Vectors, mosquitoes, other vectors, rats, etc. Population displacement. We know that the biggest driver of refugees in this country, in this world, is because of climate change right now. Okay, health outcomes, health-related illnesses, cardiopulmonary illnesses, food, water, and vector-borne disease, and then also this whole thing about mental health impacts of climate change, right? And so there's a lot of things that we need to do when it comes to environmental institutional context and the social and behavioral context, things that we could address to make sure that we can have equity in climate change mitigation, adaptation, and resilience, right? So I just want to kind of dig into that a little bit. Reverend Silver, you want to chime in? How am I looking on time?
We're at 6:20. I know that I encourage folks to take a break if they needed to, and I thank you all for staying engaged. But we wanted to conclude these at 7 o'clock. But if you finish early, I'm pretty sure people will be pleased about that as well.
Yeah, I got to eat my dinner soon, so I'll keep it moving for y'all. But I want to give y'all a chance to talk. Because again, it's not class, so I'm gonna give y'all, let's make this interactive. What are your thoughts about, I just covered some climate change stuff. What have you observed? How have you observed air pollution impacting the lives of people in your community, your family, other species, other geographies, other environments? Anyone wants to chime in? Like how is air pollution impacting you and those of you love, or those where you live?
Yeah, just a little anecdotal experience. My fiance and I used to live in Midtown here in Baltimore, like around the corner from the Belvedere. And around about this time last year, we moved out to Gwynno, Catonsville area. And just the difference in pollution coming off of 83 and from the buses that would idle at our red light, like my asthma was out of control. And within like a week and a half of moving out to the burbs, I was pretty much back to normal. It was just wild to see how different, that little change is.
But it's a big change because your exposure to air. Think about it again from exposure perspective. It's about, and I should know this. Sometimes we get it. It's concentration, magnitude, frequency, and duration. Right. So if you're out there, you live in there where you have high amount of traffic-related air pollution. If you're outside walking, riding a bike, or there's intrusion inside your home, you're gonna have higher concentration than other people have. You have more frequent exposure, right? Higher magnitude. Okay. So your whole exposure pathways change when you move to the burbs. You probably also had fewer trees too, right? Where you lived before in Baltimore.
Oh, absolutely. They like clear cut the whole block one day. They just came in and took all the trees down all in one go without any warning. So we weren't even getting any filtering there.
Yeah, so you lost because trees are good for what? Air pollution mitigation, heat mitigation, stormwater mitigation. There's so many benefits to having, and that's a big thing about not having green infrastructure. We need green infrastructure to help with these impacts, right? To mitigate these impacts we're talking about. Thank you for that. I'm glad to hear your asthma is under control. So changing the environment is important. Having environmental health leads to public health, right? Anyone else wants to chime in?
This is Beth, and I was just going to say, in terms of indoor pollutants, for instance, you should never buy new carpet during the time of year when you can't have your windows open, so some of that off-gassing goes out. You shouldn't paint when you can't have your windows open. There's simple things you can do to manage the fact that so many of the products we buy have those volatile organic compounds in them.
Yeah, so many products we buy are poisonous. The poison is all about the dose, right? So if you can, have HVAC system that helps to, clean, push out the bad air and bring in new air. Like I said, just simple opening your windows. But part of the problem is you live in an area where you open your windows, you have outdoor air pollution, then you're kind of stuck. So I think in some places they're not able to really use that natural approach, that non-mechanical approach, because they live in a highly polluted area. So we have to find a way, maybe having, buying air filters for folks. So for example, and many of you maybe who live in DC area may know about the Buzzard Point community. Buzzard Point hosts a new DC United soccer stadium. I love soccer, but that area's been gentrified, right? And so during the construction phase of building that soccer stadium, they were doing a lot of dust control issues. There's a lot of dust getting to people's homes. Now, the Band-Aid that was given was they gave people air filters. Now, that's not the solution, but it did help to a certain extent, right? But the solution would have been having much better dust control in the construction phase. And also there's a lot of diesel exhaust too, and having large construction vehicles that did not burn diesel, that were electrified, right? That would be a better dust control, and electrified vehicles would have been a better way to reduce the intrusion of the dust, in particular matter, into those folks' homes.
Professor, I got a question for you. I'm curious to know how these N95 masks work when you're outside. And granted, some of us are still wearing a mask inside. Some of us are wearing the N95s. How effective are they outside, even though we tend to take them off since we can social distance and air is flowing? We're not worried about COVID issues, but how effective are those masks outside?
Yeah, I'm probably not the most qualified person to answer that question. I don't want to give you the wrong answer. I would say just to be accurate, Dr. Don Milton, who's at the University of Maryland in my department, would be a better person to answer that question, because he is one of the experts on airborne disease and COVID. He's been doing a lot of work on COVID-19, right? But I would say that I think they're effective against certain types of agents, and I mean, I think, viral agents has been effective against viral agents. I'm not sure how effective they are as some of the, fully effective as some of the chemical agents. I think they help, but I'm not sure they're fully effective with the spectrum of chemical agents, particularly chemical mixture. Yeah, go ahead.
I was actually gonna literally speak on that, Reverend Silva. So that's really funny that you said that. But I mean, I know, like, my father, I could speak on my father. Like during the pandemic, where he's located, the Sahara dust definitely, as a result of climate change, the Sahara dust, it's a regular thing to happen, to drift across to certain countries. And because of climate change, it's been increasing. And that was one thing that he was so shocked about. Like, he usually gets affected very easily. He gets sick, like gets the cold. It's because that dust carries a lot of dirt, a lot of other harmful things that can seep into your lungs, etc. And he was like, well, now that I have the mask, like when he goes out, he doesn't feel like, he doesn't get sick anymore. So I think there's some, as Dr. Wilson was saying, I think there's some degree of filtration occurring, specifically with, I mean, I also can't speak on that for sure, but I think there is some degree of like some
it's the particle size.
Yes, exactly.
With the Saharan dust, that's a larger particle size. So you heard me use PM10. So you even have stuff that's bigger than PM10. So it's helping to filter that stuff out, but things are smaller. Right.
Yeah.
It may not be able to get, again, that spectrum as efficiently. But I'm gonna say this: I'm gonna wear my mask forever. Just to let y'all know. I mean, I'm a man, and then Natasha. Well, I'm gonna talk about Natasha. We do mask and gloves. So, but I'm a proponent of wearing mask anytime I'm outside of my house. Because again, just to use a different term, when you're in your home microenvironment, I mean, like you were in a microenvironment, but we found ourselves in different microenvironments, a grocery store, maybe at work, in a school setting, et cetera. Those are different microenvironments. You don't know what the level of the toxic load of a virus or chemical is. So it's important to find, using PPE, personal protective, gear, right? And so a mask is an appropriate PPE to wear in the case of the pandemic. But in general, I think us changing our kind of personal protection behaviors and our personal hygiene behaviors, wearing a mask I think is a good thing to do. So I'm an advocate for wearing your mask often.
Appreciate your thoughts on that, both of you. Thanks.
Yep.
I'd like to comment back on the home furnishings and indoor air quality. So someone had mentioned about when things are off-gassing, open the windows, which is a very good idea. But there are so many products today that do not off gas. So they're available, like for carpet, wool, a natural material, does not off gas.
Mhm.
There are many paints that have low or no VOC, no off
Yep.
gases.
So you should get the alternatives. Yes.
Yeah.
So from a consumer behavior perspective, it's putting that work in to be able to find those products that don't off gas, that don't what's the word? Particleize, right? That's something that you have to do too. But that takes a lot of work because again, like with personal care products, we assume that they're safe. We have to do actually more work to understand that what the risk is. Like instead of saying assume they're safe, you have to assume how risky they are, because a lot of FDA, for example, doesn't do a lot of work when it comes to personal care products that really protect us. And then the EPA has limitations too, and what it can do. So like 3 agencies that we have to really be aware of what they're doing when it comes to protecting us, when it comes to consumer products, are the FDA, the EPA, and what's the third one? FDA, EPA, I'm forgetting one. Is it USDA? But definitely FDA,
Consumer
EPA.
products.
CPSC.
I
That's the
thought
human.
I'd tell you about another one. There's a nonprofit group called the Environmental Working Group.
Working group. Yep, that's a website you can go to.
And they rate cleaning products, personal care products, sunscreen, pesticides on produce. And you can go on their website.
Their website and check it out. Yep.
Search
So
out.
they do some of the work for you.
Yeah, they have thousands of products on there that are rated, and so many of the ones that are in the mainstream are, rated F, really bad. Yep.
Also, consumer products does a little bit of that work too. We worked on a project with them last year to look at the differential distribution of warehouses, particularly Amazon warehouses in the country, because those warehouses are an area source for air pollution. And you saw on one of the photos earlier in the presentation, area sources like farms, what I would call a big warehouse. That many of those warehouses like football size, multiple football field size facilities. And so they're definitely hot spots for air pollution. Warehouses are, okay. But definitely, thank you for that. EWG is a great resource. Consumer products is another resource. And then there are a lot of groups, private sector groups based in California that will also be resources. And another entity that's a good resource is the Silent Spring Institute. That's another one as well. Rachel Carson, so y'all know all about Silent Spring, of course. So I skipped a few slides. I know I got the nod from Reverend Silver. Give us some time back. So I'm gonna hurry up. I heard you, Reverend Silver. Give you a little bit of time back. So you think about it. You talked about environmental justice last week. Think about environmental justice. So thinking about air quality, you got equity and justice issues relates to policy benefits and investments. So one of the things right now, I mentioned briefly the Inflation Reduction Act. As you know, there's $370 billion in that act to go to climate change, energy justice, and environmental justice. $60 billion specifically for environmental justice. There's a lot of money for energy justice as relates to a just energy transition on the production side, clean cars, and on the consumption side, energy efficiency, weatherization, access to electric vehicles. I talked about the $7,500 credit, 30% rebate rebate on solar, which is not accessible to everybody, because who has money to put down on solar? Solar's expensive, so that's an issue too. And then also as I said, I think the rebate or the credit for the folks who buy the used electric car. And then, so that's one thing. Of course, you had the bipartisan infrastructure bill. So those are the investments. But we had to make sure from an environmental justice perspective that there's the distribution of benefits, that everyone benefits from those implementation of those laws. As I mentioned in one of my early comments, the IRA, I think, is really leaning towards benefiting more middle and high income folks, not really folks at the lower income strata. Okay, I think it's highly problematic. I'm actually starting to work on a brief policy brief for British Medical Journal. I got invited actually on Friday to actually do a critique of the IRA and talk about environmental justice and public health benefits. So some of them I'm sharing now. I'll be mentioning in that critique of the IRA for that journal. But you have those issues. You have industry. We want to make sure we have clean technologies. So reducing smokestack emissions, which are a big deal. capturing methane gas, which is a problem when you think about landfills and incinerators, and also other sources. Energy and power generation, moving away from dirty fossil fuel. Most environmental justice issues, in my opinion, classic environmental justice issues, are actually energy justice issues. So you think about, again, the dirty fossil fuel infrastructure and the life cycle, as I mentioned before, that's environmental injustice, okay? And so moving to, from dirty fossil fuels to clean energy sources, so geothermal, wind, solar. Community solar is a big issue. So making sure that folks have access to solar, and that's an equity issue. Transportation, rapid urban transit, no more highways. I did a presentation for a group called No More Highways. We need more, we don't need any more highways, right? So mass transit is important, electrification of mass transit, using different fuels, or just moving away from fossil fuels in general. Better urban planning and making sure there's equity in urban planning, because a lot of our urban redevelopment is leading to gentrification, which y'all know was, pushed expulsive zoning plan development. Some folks who were left behind by the suburbanization movement are now being pushed out by the redevelopment movement. You see that happening in DC. A lot of folks who live in DC are now, because of affordable housing issues, are now pushed to live in Charles County. Y'all know what I'm talking about. And municipal agricultural waste management, better methods of waste reduction. I mean, food waste gets pushed to landfills, or food waste is being pushed to incinerators. And that, again, when you burn this waste, it produces greenhouse gases and co-pollutants. So we have to do a better job as consumers of, wasting less food, or if we do have to get rid of the food, composting the food. So we use that resource and we can take it to farms and outside of the cities, or use it for urban agriculture, permaculture, sustainable regenerative agriculture. I talk about that too. I do some work on K-foods, concentrated animal feeding operations, the big deal, for industrial chicken farms, for those about Eastern Shore of the Delmarva, or those who live in North Carolina, for example, industrial hog farms, or cattle feedlots in California, New Mexico, Texas, right? Sorry, I'm talking so fast. I want to get y'all some time back. Sorry. So then you have policies, right? So I talked about the infrastructure bill. I talked about the IRA, but then you have executive orders like Executive Order 14008. So this is the executive order on tackling the climate crisis abroad. So as we move away from a dirty energy economy into a clean energy economy, they want 40% of those benefits to go to disadvantaged communities. That's called the Justice 40 Initiative. And so that's one of the President Biden's most important initiatives to really get us off of dirty fossil fuels into a clean energy future and have a just energy transition. So with a just energy transition, hopefully that will lead to less greenhouse gas emissions. Hopefully it will lead to less co-pollutants. Hopefully that can lead to better public health, improvements in public health, quality of life, just a better environmental quality, right? And so we have to think about, when we think about air pollution, we got to think about the climate crisis again, because when we burn fossil fuels, we produce greenhouse gases that contribute to those climate-related perturbations I mentioned before. Sea level rise, right? Temperature rise, lead to more frequent and extreme weather events, whether it be extreme rainfall, extreme temperature changes, hurricanes, droughts, forest fires. You see what's happening in California. You see what's happening in Europe this year with forest fires. You saw what happened last year with Pacific heat dome and all the folks who died in the Pacific Northwest, right? You saw what happened a few weeks ago with Dallas, the floods. You see what's happening right now in Mississippi with flooding. You're seeing what's happening in Baltimore with flooding, right? You saw what happened last year with Hurricane Ida in New Jersey, right? It hit New Orleans and then it hit New Jersey in the back end, okay? So we want to move away from the dirty energy economy, clean energy economy, rebuild the infrastructure, have more smart agriculture, revitalize communities with energy issues, and really secure environmental justice, and also use this to create a new economy that's people-focused, community-centered, justice-focused, and restorative, regenerative economy, right? That's less about fossil fuels and more about, our being in balance with Mother Nature, right? So let me keep moving. So I feel like there's also some executive orders on racial equity that also a part of this, that connect to this issue of environmental justice. And I mentioned Justice 40 already. So this whole issue of making sure that folks that are most impacted by these climate and energy justice issues, that are most impacted by mobile and stationary sources of air pollution, they're most impacted by the deleterious effects of those air pollutants, right? That they get these benefits. So we have this term for communities that are EJ communities, we call them frontline communities, my statement is the communities the frontline communities should be at the front of the line when it comes to investments. So whether it be from the IRA, from the CARES Act, really coronavirus, or the bipartisan infrastructure bill, that these folks should get investments first and the most, because they're the ones that are doing the higher magnitude of impact from air pollution, from environmental justice, and from climate change. Okay, I think I'm gonna stop there because we got some more slides, mapping stuff in Chevrolet. I think the team can talk about Chevrolet in another example. But yeah, I can skip this stuff. And yeah, just to close out, what are folks' ideas about, ways that we can improve air quality? What are some of the projects and initiatives that you want to see in your communities and with your churches? What would you like to do? How would you like to maximize this collaboration, this partnership? Any thoughts? I know y'all hungry. I'm hungry too, y'all. My stomach is growling here.
Well, Professor, I think you heard me, share with you sort of our vision of what we're hoping to do in bringing churches together, as we talked years ago, actually, before we got to this point here.
Was that 2018?
Yeah, Robin, I think I think it goes back to 2018. We were talking about a lot of this work that we're doing right now. So I'm glad to see that it's coming to fruition. I mean, I would like to just see it grow in a lot of ways, like Tracy discussed tonight. I would love for us to have the ability to work more closely with our churches in New Jersey. We want to go where there's some energy and passion to do something now, and try to bring together a collection of our churches. So we're maximizing, as the key word you stated, maximizing our collective power around a set of priorities, so that we can have a greater impact and not be so dispersed. One church over here doing this, one church over there doing that, and we're not seeing any real progress. And in partnering with like-minded organizations like yours and IPL and others, so that we could do this work together, because no one organization can do this work by itself. So I'm hoping that in the context of the ways in which our churches have been responding to this issue in terms of doing work internally around their buildings, I think education is critically important always in terms of helping both individual members to take a shift in terms of how they, as we like to say, reduce our carbon footprint. So how do we do that in the context of air pollution? How do we reduce the pollution based upon how we live our everyday lives? So I think that's something I would want to even explore in terms of how we navigate that with our local churches, particularly individual members, of how they do that in and around their homes and in and around their communities.
Yeah. And we can help with that developing the educational materials. So on the individual level, and then on more the meso level, like your neighborhood, your city level, what you can do at home, and what you in the church, and then what you can do in your community. So we can help with that. Okay.
Others? You got a question in the chat here from Sia Barbara Kamara with Faith United Church of Christ in Washington, D.C. She said, I would like to see some opportunities to share some of the information with person in the communities near our church in partnership with other UCC churches and faith-based groups. So maybe like community forums, I would say Sia is one way to do that, trying to find opportunities and ways to bring people together in the community to educate them about how to reduce air pollution, both inside their homes and around in their homes as well. And the impact, of course, collectively is the community.
Yeah, yes, definitely.
Oh, go ahead, C. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just agreeing with what Marvin was saying, yes.
Oh, yes, Rebecca, church green teams. And one thing we can do, because we can't be everywhere, but we can do a trainer program. So I think we talked about that, Marvin, a trainer program. So we do a trainer program. And another group, I'm just getting me excited. I know we gotta go, because everybody has to eat. I know y'all tired of hearing me talk for 2 hours, but we do have a partner, the Children's Environmental Health Network. They have education materials already for, they focus on children, reducing exposures inside the homes and childcare settings to protect children. So they already have stuff. So they already have like handy dandy fact sheets and guides, I think in both English and Spanish, that can be shared with members of the church. So we don't have to reinvent the wheel, right? So that could be a partner we can bring in to help with some of those education materials too. But we can train the green teams, and this will become part of the skill sets and the materials that the green teams share, through the churches.
We just
Exactly.
developed a green team the beginning of the summer, and we had 3 young people, interns, who helped
Okay.
set it up. So we're excited.
Yep. Oh, thank you, Pamela, and thank you, Sid, for that comment. And yeah, thank you. Children's Environmental Health Network Day. What day is it again, Pamela? It's Children's Environmental Health Day. What day is it again?
October 13th.
So it's a month from now. So there's a national. Is it 30th? Is it 30th one or 25th one? Which one? Which day is it? Is it the 30th one?
Let me see.
But that's
Ariel and I were on the same wavelength.
Yeah, thank you both, Ariel and Pamela, for that. That's a big celebration of children's health and what we can do to protect our children. And I think that through the lens of children is another way to really focus on how we can, again, address and reduce these exposures that we're talking about. So we can definitely bring in the network as a partner to help with some of those education materials that I talked about before.
Do you ever, I'm just curious, do you ever get into like talk of people eating less meat and how, less ag business affects the air pollution?
Yes. So I'm smiling because I just had a conversation with my team today. I do this environmental justice podcast. And one of the things that I want to do for the next podcast is talk about food justice. But yes, agriculture, particularly big ag, is a major contributor to greenhouse gas emissions. You think, again, the production of the feed, right, that's fed to the animals, the transport of the feed to the animals, the transport of animals from farm to farm, right, the processing of the animals, and then also their own, cows and their own, process of breaking down food produces methane. So there's multiple components of the agriculture production process where greenhouse gases and co-pollutants are emitted. Even the issue with methane gas from industrial chicken farms, industrial hog farms. There's this whole big issue now. Oh, we're going to trap the methane gas to turn to energy. Well, I don't like, that's a false solution, because the solution is not have huge agricultural farms. That's a solution, right? So yes, one part of, we do have this one ag collaborative. We've been working with folks at Johns Hopkins and St. Mary's College and engaging with this social responsible agriculture project to look at impacts of big ag on communities in the Eastern Shore. And we do have a grant that's been submitted, I think our grant, to start doing air quality monitoring near big ag facilities in the Eastern Shore. So yes, just to be more succinct, we are looking at that issue. And in veganism, I think not saying I'm promoting being a vegan. I do, my better half, she's a vegan. So that is a solution too, that people eat less meat, because a lot of carbon goes into the production of meat. That is something that can be shared too. But you have to get people an alternative too. So that's also one of the issues. There has to be an equity issue. You transition folks off of meat. What are the alternatives? So one of the things that we talked about, and when I want to do this EJ podcast on food, is to make sure we invest in permaculture, regenerative agriculture, sustainable agriculture, and urban agriculture. So that's something that we're really, really excited about as a way to, so if you don't have to have your food come from a rural farm, you just grow your food in the city. The transport costs go down dramatically, right? We use our walls, we use our roofs, roofs, we have green walls and green roofs, right? I have a micro farm in my house. And again, I know you want to give time back to folks, Reverend Silver, but I got all kinds, I grow grapes, I grow mangoes. They haven't grown yet, but I have the mango trees. I got 4 of them. I grow pomegranates. They haven't grown yet, but I have a pomegranate hedge. I have raised beds. I grow all kinds of stuff, gooseberries, chokeberries, not kiwis, fig, apples. Grow your own food at your own house. Let me stop talking. That's part of the solution too. If you can't grow at your own house, get a community garden. But investing in community-based agriculture, community ag co-ops, that's part of the solution too. So thank you for that question. You got me talking about food, Lacey. Let me stop talking. I love talking about
I was just going to say thank you so much, because a lot of people don't want to talk about that part of it. And even churches around here have been talking about doing community gardens. So thank you.
Yep, you're welcome. And there's some monies that are through the infrastructure, bipartisan infrastructure investment bill, the act, that there's dollars there. Another partner for y'all is the Green to Church movement. They're another partner that can help, I think, get access to some resources, you know, and then at least in the state of Maryland, the Climate Solutions Now Act, I think there was some monies in that bill related to green infrastructure. Now, maybe ag, you know, urban ag is not part of that. But if you think about starting food forests, urban food forests, that's a solution, right? So I'll stop there.
You know, the final comments, thoughts? Again, for
Yes,
those who are still here, thanks for your, go ahead, Cynthia.
and at Covenant Baptist, we have a community garden, and that's one thing I was interested in. You know, we've had a community garden for over 4 years now, and I've been farming. Well, my grandmother taught me at the age of 5, and I have garden at my home, but you know, it's so important that, you know, we do have a food bank. So that's really something I'm interested in, the funding part, because right now we need some type of underwater and watering system. So I heard the information about funding, but if there's any way that they can be put in the chat so I can take a screenshot of the information, but I'm definitely agreeable in the part of it's so important, you know, but I also had a question in regards to mold and how mold affects the air quality. I have a lot of allergies, and throughout my life, I had what they call a chronic sinusitis. And my levels of mold that I was allergic to is like 10. And when you were talking about air quality in Northern District, there's a lot of buildings. So they said not only am I allergic to mold, I'm allergic to mold, the regular mold, but mold in the air, which I'm asthmatic. So I had a question about that as well.
Yeah, and thank you for that. I forgot to mention, when we think about indoor air quality, I forgot to mention mold and mildew. So that is a major source of allergens. And so, you know, that's why it's important to have a good HVAC system, right? To address, you know, water vapor in homes. And so that's definitely a source, a issue when you think about biological stressor that contribute to asthma. Now, mold in the air, I'm not as familiar just like in ambient air, but more familiar with impacts of indoor mold on indoor air quality and human health. But I think we have to address that too, and how we are building materials, right? So, because mold can basically grow in any substrate. And so we got to do a better job of addressing, you know, so the quality of the housing stock, right, is a thing to focus on when we think about how we're going to improve public health. We have to think about our microenvironments, and we're in our home, we're inside buildings 9% of the time. And we're in that one microenvironment we're in most of the day is our home. So yes, that's a place that we need to focus on, not just that outdoor air pollution sources, but also indoor air pollution sources. But mold and just the ambient air, I'm not as familiar with that research, that literature. Okay, but just to go back to your point about food real quick, I just had a real serendipitous meeting with the assistant director of the Maryland Extension Service. I went to the Prince George's County County Fair on Friday. Of course, I had my mask on, and so she would be someone who's familiar with some of the resources because they have a master gardener program. So her name is Nia Fields. Now, I'm not sure who the extension agent director is for DC, for example. I'm not sure what city you're in, but UDC, University of DC, has a big kind of extension sustainability program. That would be another resource as a partner. But where are you located at?
Washington,
Ms. Cynthia?
Yes, I
Okay.
actually do know about the Master Garden program. They actually sent me the information about that. That's something that I'm trying to do next year. As far as I'm not ready for that, but that part yet, I'm trying to take it in phases. But I've had some gardening classes. I do know about year-round gardening. Everything I do is really organic. But thank you, because that is a resource I do have with UDC. So I need to look back into that as well, see what they can offer besides the Master Gardening class.
Dr. Wilson, our food sovereignty folks, our food sovereignty symposium presenter was DC.
Our session, yeah. Who was the group? DC Green? I don't think
I'm looking it up.
DC Green didn't participate in the session, but we did. There's a group called DC Green that could be a partner for folks interested in urban ag. Who else we have? DC Green. There's some folks in Baltimore, but yeah, we can probably try to find some information about funding. I think the Green to Church as a partner could be a resource to find some funding as well. So the Green to Church group would be a resource, and then Chesapeake Bay program, maybe Robin, will they have resources that people can apply to implement some type of program?
I'm sorry, I had to step away.
Oh, you're good. You're good.
What was the question?
I was saying, would the Chesapeake Bay program have any resources as relates to kind of like food sovereignty, urban ag projects? We're trying to figure out what's some funding resources.
Well, I know the Black Church Food Security Network has a lot of resources, and I've seen some things come across my desk. So, am I echoing? So I can put my email in the chat. You guys can email me, and I'll shoot you over some stuff because I just got tons of emails. So I saw some.
Okay,
so
cool.
How about we do that?
But I would really appreciate that.
Great.
Okay, cool. Back to you, Reverend.
Any other final questions or thoughts? We got about 4 minutes left to 7 o'clock. Really appreciate those of you who are able to hang around for your due diligence. We've learned a lot today. Know that this session is being recorded. Know that Professor Wilson is going to share the slides, so we'll get all that information out to you. And as John mentioned in the chat, he's going to pull together some of the data, the information from the chat on organizations. And if you have information on funding sources or other organizations in regards to tonight's discussion, send it his way. We can sort of all catalog it and get it back out to you as you explore how to move forward, both individually in terms of the work that you want to do personally and as an environmental justice person, advocate, but also as a local church. Just want to share this last word, which is, for those who have not been engaged with our Justice and Witness Action network to date, part of our hope as we move through this particular initiative and this educational series with our partners here is we're hoping to build our environmental and climate justice issue-based network so that we can bring together individuals like you, people of faith, bring together clergy, both pastors and those serving in other settings, both in the church and in the community, and local churches as a whole to come together and work together around these particular issues in our respective communities and areas. And I think tonight, Tracy kept giving a great example of the number of churches in a particular area in New Jersey. So just if we were able to get those churches together in New Jersey to work together, strategize together, to organize together, imagine what impact they could have just in that local area in regards to prioritizing and focusing on one issue. So we're taking a real community organizing approach to our work, and we're hoping that tonight's session is just the beginning of your engagement with us in this work. And we definitely look forward to you joining us for the next session, which is scheduled for September 26th. That's 2 Mondays from now. We will get out the link to you so that you can RSVP. We want to make sure that we give you the Zoom information. And we know that for those individuals who are participating in the pilot program for DC and Maryland in terms of air quality monitoring, you have to have your 2 representatives here. But this is available for all across the conference, these educational series. So share the information with those who you think would like to learn more and who you think definitely have a passion and interest in environmental climate justice. With that being said, I think we are done with tonight's session. I want to thank you, Professor Williams. I want to thank you, Robin. Thank you, John. Thank you, Ariel. And thank all of you for taking the time to be with us this evening. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having us. You have a good evening.
Take care.
Yeah, bye-bye. Take care.
And we will stop recording.